Hi, friends. Welcome back. Today we're going on an incredible journey, and along the way you're going to improve your English too. We're diving into the life of one of the most influential people of our time. A visionary, a tech genius, and a global philanthropist. You might know him as the co-founder of Microsoft, but his story is so much more than that. This isn't just a success story. It's a journey filled with passion, ambition, failure, and determination. And while we explore his life, you'll pick up new English words, phrases, and ideas, naturally and effortlessly. So, are you ready to learn English in a powerful, exciting way? Let's get started. Imagine sitting in a dimly lit room, eyes glued to a glowing computer screen, fingers flying over the keyboard as you write lines of code. You're not just playing around, you're building something that could change the world. Now, imagine doing that as a teenager, long before most people even knew what a personal computer was. That was Bill Gates. He wasn't just another kid in school. While most teenagers were worried about football games or prom, Bill was sneaking into his school's computer lab at night just to get extra time with the machines. He was obsessed, not in a casual way, but in the kind of way that makes history. And guess what? That obsession paid off. Because today, Bill Gates is one of the most influential people in the world. The man who co-founded Microsoft, changed the way we use technology, and became one of the richest people on the planet. But how did he do it? What made him different? That's what we're diving into today. So, sit back, relax, and let's go back to where it all began. Bill was born in 1955 in Seattle, Washington. His family wasn't just any family. They were well-educated, well-connected, and ambitious. His dad was a successful lawyer, and his mom was on the board of directors for major companies. Sounds like the perfect setup for a future billionaire, right? But here's the thing, Bill wasn't interested in law or business meetings. He was a kid with a wild curiosity, especially when it came to one thing: computers. Now, let's put this into perspective. Today, you can pull out your phone and look up anything in seconds. But back in the 1960s, computers weren't a part of everyday life. They were these massive machines that filled entire rooms, and only a handful of people had access to them. So, when Bill got his hands on a computer at his private school, it was like love at first sight. He didn't just want to use it, he wanted to understand it, break it down, rebuild it, and make it do things no one else had imagined. And he wasn't alone. That's where Paul Allen comes in. Paul Allen was older than Bill by a couple of years, but they shared the same obsession with computers. They would spend hours programming, pushing the limits of what these early machines could do. But they weren't just coding for fun. They saw something that most people missed: a future where computers weren't just for scientists or big companies. A future where regular people, you and me, could have a computer in our homes. At the time, that idea sounded ridiculous. Imagine trying to tell someone in the 1970s, hey, one day, everyone will have a computer at home, and they'll use it for everything, from work to entertainment to ordering food. People would have laughed at you. But Bill and Paul weren't laughing. They were planning. Then, in 1975, they got their big break. One day, Paul Allen saw a magazine featuring a new personal computer called the Altair 8800. It wasn't exactly a household gadget, it was a bulky, complicated machine, but it was a step toward personal computing. Bill and Paul saw this as their chance. Now, here's where things get crazy. They didn't have a product yet. They had an idea, a vision, and a whole lot of confidence. So what did they do? They called the company behind the Altair and said, hey, we've got software that can run on your machine. Small problem. They didn't But that didn't stop them. They locked themselves in a room, coding nonstop, and within a few weeks they had something real. When they finally showed it to the company, it worked. And just like that, they had their first deal. That moment changed everything. It proved that they weren't just two computer nerds, they were visionaries. And that's how Microsoft was born. At this point, Bill had a choice. He was still a student at Harvard, and his parents probably expected him to become a lawyer or something respectable. But Bill had bigger plans. So he dropped out. Yep, one of the richest men in the world today never finished college. But he wasn't just quitting, he was all in on Microsoft. Now, let's talk about something that made Bill Gates different. He wasn't just a genius coder. He was a ruthless businessman. Most people think of him as a soft-spoken, nerdy billionaire, but back in the day he was known for being aggressive, competitive, and relentless. He worked insane hours, expected the same from his team, and was laser-focused on making Microsoft the biggest software company in the world. And guess what? It worked. In 1980, something huge happened. IBM, the biggest name in computing at the time, wanted to enter the personal computer market. They needed software and they approached Microsoft. Now, Bill saw this as a golden opportunity. But here's the twist. Microsoft didn't actually have the software IBM needed. Sounds familiar, right? Instead of saying no, Bill made a bold move. He told IBM he had what they needed, then went out and bought an existing operating system from another company for a small price. Then he rebranded it as MS-DOS and sold it to IBM. But here's the genius part, he didn't sell it outright. He licensed it. That meant every time IBM sold a computer, Microsoft got paid. And because IBM was huge, their computers were everywhere. That meant Microsoft's software was everywhere. And just like that, Microsoft became the king of the software world. But Bill wasn't done. He knew that for personal computers to truly take over, they needed to be easy to use. MS-DOS was powerful, but it was complicated. People had to type commands just to do basic things. So, Microsoft built Windows, a graphical interface that made computers user-friendly. Instead of typing commands, you could just click icons and open programs. Seems obvious now, but back then, it was revolutionary. And once Windows became the standard, Microsoft was unstoppable. By the 1990s, Bill Gates was the richest man in the world. Microsoft controlled nearly every computer on the planet, and Windows was everywhere. But success wasn't just about money. Bill had changed the way we interact with technology. He took something that was once only for scientists and made it a part of everyday life. And that was just the beginning. So, we've seen how Bill Gates went from a computer-obsessed teenager to the co-founder of Microsoft, shaking up the tech world with Windows. By the 1990s, Microsoft wasn't just a company, it was the company. Computers were becoming household items, and almost every one of them ran Microsoft software. But when you're at the top, competition gets fierce. People start questioning your power. Some even see you as the bad guy. By the mid-90s, Microsoft had basically won the battle for personal computers. Windows was everywhere. Businesses, schools, homes, if you had a computer, there was a good chance it was running Windows. And that made Bill Gates incredibly powerful. Think about it, if one company controls the software that most of the world relies on, that's a big deal. But Microsoft wasn't just selling software. It was shaping how we used computers. And that led to one of the biggest tech rivalries of all time. Now, if we're talking about the history of computers, we have to talk about Apple. Bill Gates and Steve Jobs had a complicated relationship. They were both visionaries, but they saw the future of computing differently. Jobs was all about design, creativity, and making technology feel cool. Gates, on the other hand, focused on strategy, efficiency, and making software that worked for everyone. In the early days, Microsoft and Apple weren't exactly enemies. In fact, Microsoft even created software for Apple's first computers. But things changed when Microsoft launched Windows. Apple claimed that Windows was basically a rip-off of their Macintosh operating system. And to be fair, they weren't entirely wrong. Windows did borrow a lot of ideas from Apple's graphical interface. Steve Jobs was furious. He once confronted Gates, saying, "You stole from us." And Bill? He just shrugged and said something legendary. "Well, Steve, I think it's more like we both had this rich neighbor named Xerox, and I broke into his house to steal the TV, only to find out you had already stolen it." That's right. Apple also got its idea for a graphical user interface from another company, Xerox. This rivalry continued for decades, but at the time, Microsoft had the upper hand. Windows was cheaper, it ran on more devices, and businesses loved it. Apple was struggling. Now let's talk about the Internet. By the mid-90s, the Internet was exploding. Everyone wanted to be online. And Microsoft saw this as another opportunity to dominate. They launched Internet Explorer and made sure it came pre-installed with every copy of Windows. For most people, this meant Internet Explorer was the Internet. They didn't bother downloading other browsers because they didn't need to. Smart move, right? Well, not everyone saw it that way. Here's where things started getting messy. By forcing Internet Explorer onto every Windows computer, Microsoft wasn't just competing, it was crushing the competition. Other web browsers like Netscape never stood a chance. And the US government wasn't happy about it. In 1998, Microsoft was hit with one of the biggest antitrust lawsuits in history. The government accused Microsoft of being a monopoly, of using its power to kill competition instead of just winning fair and square. During the trial, Bill Gates had to testify, and let's just say, it didn't go well. He gave short, robotic answers, dodged questions, and honestly, it made him look worse. At one point, the judge even said Microsoft was acting like they were above the law. In the end, Microsoft was found guilty of monopolistic practices. At one point, there was even talk of breaking up the company. But after years of appeals and settlements, Microsoft survived. Still, this was a turning point for Bill Gates. The government was watching. Competitors were pushing back. And the world was changing fast. By the early 2000s, Microsoft was still huge, but the tech world was evolving. Google was on the rise. Apple, once struggling, had made a comeback with the iPod and later the iPhone. Bill Gates saw that it was time for a change. In 2006, he stepped down from his daily role at Microsoft. Not because he was done working, but because he had a new mission, one even bigger than building a tech empire. After leaving Microsoft, Bill Gates focused on something completely different: philanthropy. Along with his then-wife Melinda, he launched the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, one of the biggest charitable organizations in the world. Instead of just donating money here and there, Bill wanted to solve big problems: diseases, education, poverty. And he wasn't just writing checks. He approached philanthropy the same way he approached business: strategically. One of the foundation's biggest missions? Eradicating diseases like malaria and polio. Think about this: Bill Gates, the guy who spent his life dealing with computers, was now tackling global health crises. And it worked. The foundation has helped vaccinate millions of children, fund life-saving research, and even played a major role in the fight against COVID-19. So, how do we see Bill Gates today? On one hand, he's a genius, the guy who made personal computing possible, changed the software industry, and helped shape the modern world. On the other hand, he's had his share of controversies. The Microsoft monopoly case, his aggressive business tactics, even conspiracy theories about his involvement in global health issues. But one thing is clear, whether you love him or criticize him, you can't ignore the impact he's had. And that raises a question. If you had that much money and power, what would you do with it? Would you build more businesses? Give it all away? Try to change the world in your own way? That's the thing about people like Bill Gates. They make us think about what's possible. So far, we've followed Bill Gates from his early days as a computer-obsessed teenager, all the way to becoming the co-founder of Microsoft and shaping the digital world as we know it. But what happens when the tech mogul steps away from his empire and moves on to something even bigger? After stepping down from Microsoft in 2006, Bill Gates didn't slow down. In fact, he dove headfirst into global challenges, shifting his focus from technology to philanthropy. This part of his journey is as fascinating as the rise of Microsoft itself. Let's talk about what Bill Gates has been up to since leaving the tech world. How did he go from changing the way we use computers to changing the world for the better? And what's next for him? When Bill Gates stepped down as CEO of Microsoft, he made it clear that he wanted to focus on giving back. But he didn't want to simply donate money. He wanted to solve some of the world's toughest problems. Bill, along with his then-wife Melinda, launched the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in 2000. The foundation's mission? To fight poverty, enhance healthcare, and expand educational opportunities around the world. If you think about it, it's hard to imagine anyone with more resources or experience tackling these massive global issues. The Gates Foundation has become one of the largest and most influential charitable organizations in the world. But instead of just giving money away, Bill and Melinda approached philanthropy like a business problem, strategic, data-driven, and with measurable goals. Bill Gates believes that solving the world's biggest challenges requires a scientific and evidence-based approach. And that's how the foundation has operated. They have invested billions of dollars into research, education, and healthcare initiatives, with a particular focus on improving the lives of people in the poorest parts of the world. One of the foundation's most significant efforts has been in global health, particularly in the fight against infectious diseases like malaria, polio, and HIV/AIDS. When Bill Gates turned his attention to malaria, for example, it wasn't just about donating money for the sake of it. He wanted to completely eradicate the disease. In fact, malaria is one of the foundation's primary focuses, and the Gates Foundation has poured hundreds of millions of dollars into finding a cure and developing life-saving treatments. And it hasn't just been malaria. Bill Gates Foundation has been pivotal in fighting polio as well. When Bill Gates began his work in global health, polio was still a big threat. But now, thanks to vaccines funded by the Gates Foundation, polio is on the brink of being eradicated. The scale of these initiatives is enormous. Imagine how many lives Bill Gates and his foundation have touched by supporting healthcare infrastructure in underserved countries. He's not just donating money. He's investing in the systems and solutions that will help people for generations to come. And while the Gates Foundation is working hard to tackle diseases, it's not just about global health. Another area that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is passionate about is education. Bill Gates believes that education is the key to breaking the cycle of poverty. In the U.S., the foundation has invested heavily in improving K-12 education, particularly in helping struggling schools, improving teacher effectiveness, and expanding access to higher education. One of their major efforts is to make sure that students from all backgrounds, especially those from underprivileged communities, have the tools and resources to succeed. The foundation has also funded programs aimed at improving public education globally, especially in places where education for girls is limited. But it's not just about building schools or providing scholarships. Bill Gates is looking at why people drop out of school, what systems aren't working, and how to use technology to bridge the education gap. He believes that technology, whether it's through online learning or interactive tools, can give students around the world the ability to learn and succeed, regardless of where they come from. That's why the Gates Foundation also focuses on expanding access to technology, ensuring that digital resources are available to communities that need them the most. Of course, philanthropy on such a large scale doesn't come without its challenges and critics. While Bill Gates is widely praised for his generosity and innovative approach to charity, there are also people who question some of his methods. Critics have raised concerns about his influence in global healthcare, questioning whether too much power is concentrated in the hands of a single individual. For example, Bill's push for the introduction of genetically modified crops in Africa, although rooted in good intentions, has faced opposition from environmental and local groups. They argue that this might harm biodiversity and depend too much on corporate solutions. Bill Gates has also been criticized for the foundation's investments in big pharmaceutical companies and other private sectors. Some critics argue that by working with corporations, the foundation is perpetuating a system that prioritizes profits over the needs of the poor. But despite the criticism, Bill Gates has continued his mission to improve global health and education, standing firm in his belief that we can solve the world's biggest problems with a combination of resources, science, and collaboration. In recent years, Bill Gates has taken on a new challenge, fighting climate change. In 2015, Gates launched Breakthrough Energy, an initiative aimed at investing in clean energy and innovative technologies to combat global warming. He has spoken passionately about the need for urgent action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and he's investing in companies that could change the way we produce and consume energy. For Gates, the issue isn't just about protecting the environment. It's about creating new jobs, new industries, and sustainable solutions for the future. His goal is to prove that we can fight climate change while also fueling economic growth. As of today, Bill Gates continues to be an influential figure in both the tech and philanthropic worlds. He's a key player in the fight against climate change, global health issues, and education reform. But what's next for him? Bill Gates has often talked about how he hopes his legacy will be defined. He says he wants to be remembered for helping to solve the biggest challenges in global health, education, and climate change. And with his foundation's ongoing work, it looks like he's just getting started. While he's no longer involved in the day-to-day operations of Microsoft, Gates still speaks out about the tech world's future, particularly the role of artificial intelligence and its potential to change every industry. Despite being the subject of many conspiracy theories, Gates continues to focus on his mission to make the world a better place. He believes that with the right investments, global cooperation, and technological innovation, we can overcome the world's toughest challenges. When we look at Bill Gates today, it's clear that he's more than just the founder of Microsoft. He's a visionary, a philanthropist, and someone who has helped change the world in ways few could have imagined. His story is one of relentless drive, problem-solving, and thinking bigger than most people. He went from creating software that revolutionized the personal computer industry to tackling diseases, fighting climate change, and pushing for better education. Bill Gates' legacy is still unfolding. Whether you agree or disagree with his methods, one thing is certain: his impact on the world will be felt for generations. And that's what makes his story so inspiring. He showed us that one person with the right vision can change the world. So that's the story of Bill Gates, the man who changed the way we use technology and continues to change the world in ways few could have predicted. From a young computer enthusiast to the billionaire philanthropist he is today, Bill Gates has had an extraordinary impact on the world. What do you think? Do you agree with his approach to philanthropy? What part of his story has inspired you the most? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that bell icon to keep up with more stories like this. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.